This week on the Daily Dose, we are talking about being human. Humans are beautiful, messy, complicated, and layered. We all have our own stories and pasts and troubles and joys. I think it is just fascinating. Humans are fascinating. Just yesterday, I was driving downtown Alexandria, getting ready to turn onto 3rd, and I turned into the right lane, and I just barely started moving in that direction, and I heard a loud honk, and I immediately moved back and looked in my mirror, and it still took me several seconds until I saw the guy almost hit in my mirror, in my line of sight. He was in my blind spot. There was no harm, so that was good, but I felt so very awful. I gave him the multiple waves. I'm so sorry. I mouthed to him, and I continued forward until there was plenty of distance between us. I flashed my blinker, and I moved into the right lane. He drove the same direction as me until I hit a stop, and he slowly drove past me, and he gave me a thumbs down. A thumbs down. Can you believe it? I would have rather gotten a different finger. It stung. Oh, it hurt. And here's the deal. This guy, he knows nothing about me. He doesn't know my story, my past, my insecurities, what I do for a living, what had happened to me earlier that day, and most importantly, he doesn't know my heart. He judged me on a split second and a blind spot. And yet, how many times have I done that same thing to others? Get cut off by a car and I'm instantly cursing them for generations to come. I perceive a comment the wrong way from someone and I'm instantly sour. And the truth is, each and every person we come into contact with, whether it's in person, in our vehicles, or online, is beloved, is messy, is fascinating. Have you ever met someone that you had prejudged and then spent time with them and found out how truly fascinating they are? Last spring, I was on a quick vacation with my buddy Keith, and I got a call from a friend. He told me that his uncle was looking for a place to drum in Alexandria that summer. I said, yeah, great, hook us up. A couple of weeks later, I was texting with this guy, and he told me he plays pretty straightforward, and he named some songs from like 30 years ago that he was familiar with, and I instantly judged him. I was like, oh great, here we go. I even texted some of my teammates and said, if you don't hear from me in the next hour, I've probably been murdered. So this guy walks in, and we do the handshake and the small talk. We play some music together, and I was like, hey, he's not so bad after all. It only took a couple weeks, and it had felt like I had met a brother for the first time, or a long-lost friend. It's like I had known this guy my whole life. If you ever watch our online worship or worship with us in the modern style, you would recognize my buddy Steve. He's a fantastic musician and truly just one-of-a-kind human being. I now know him and his family and his neighbors and his story. I know what he loves and what he doesn't. I know what he drinks and what he eats, and I know many wonderful things about him. He is my friend. He is my family. And to think I could have said no to meeting him, to think that I could have gone with my prejudgment of him, it truly scares me. How many times have I done that in the past? Many of us are familiar with the story of David and Goliath. When David, who happens to be Jesus' great-great-grandpa times like 14, when he was young, the prophet Samuel was told by God to choose the next king of Israel. Samuel goes with special instructions to find that next king. He knew that it would be a son of a guy named Jesse. And this is where our story starts today. 1 Samuel 6 says this: when they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab, son of Jesse, and thought, surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things that people look at. People look at outward appearances, but Lord looks at the heart. Spoiler alert, it is Jesse's youngest son, David, who ends up being anointed and eventually becomes king of Israel and one of the most famous, if not the greatest kings in all of biblical history. So here's my question. What would it look like to follow God's lead and to look at people's hearts instead of their appearance? People's hearts instead of their history or their words, or in some cases, even their actions. What if we gave people a chance? I know for a fact that when I do that, God works miracles in my life and in my relationships. And I know God will do the same for you because people are fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you watch this on Facebook, hit the like and share button if it means something to you. If you watched on YouTube, hit the subscribe. And if you watched on TV, invite friends and family to watch along with you. Thanks so much. God bless.